I'm going to give us just one more minute. Nick, you're muted, honey. You're still muted.
I think he's saying it won't let him unmute.
Uh-oh.
No, there we go. There we go. We're good now.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Happy 2024. For those of you that are celebrating the first day of classes, congratulations and good luck. I'm so excited for this confab today. I'll be really honest. Ashanti Blaze Hopkins from the Society of Professional Journalists is here, and she and I met during our Media Fest event in Washington, D.C. And we really connected on the fact that we were both going to be the first in our roles. Ashanti is the first Black woman president of SBJ, and myself as the first person of color president of CMA. And it really was important to me that we got together. And we talked about, the challenges and triumphs of being the first, because it is very challenging, but there are a lot of great things that we take from that. I am so happy to have Nick Hill from my alma mater, Go Gamecocks, from the University of South Carolina here as our student moderator. And so I'm going to turn it over to him. He's going to introduce himself. Ashanti is going to introduce herself, and then we'll jump into some questions. We'll do questions for about 30 to 35 minutes from Nick. And then after that, we'll open it up to the audience.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. Well, to give myself a very quick introduction, my name is Nicholas Hill. I'm a junior at the University of South Carolina studying visual communications, and I'm also the first Black station manager of Student Gamecock Television, which is the broadcast station on campus.
And I am Ashanti Blaze Hopkins, president of the Society of Professional Journalists. I'm also an interim associate dean at Santa Monica College, overseeing the Center for Media and Design. And I'm just so happy to be here. And I'm so happy that we were able to come together and have this great conversation. And I'm so happy to see all of you who are joining us this morning. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Monday morning or Monday afternoon, depending on what side of the country you're on.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Jackie, you want to introduce yourself again?
Okay, there we go. I'm Jackie Alexander. I serve as the Director of Student Media at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I also serve as the president of the College Media Association, serving all of our college media advisors across North America.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started with the questions. So the first question I have for both of y'all is, what motivated you to pursue leadership roles in your respective organizations? And did you know that you were going to be the first?
I guess I'll take the first one. So I will say this, I think if somebody had asked me maybe 10 years ago if I was going to be the president of SPJ, I probably would have laughed in their face because it wasn't necessarily in my plans. And I think what really kind of encouraged me to run for vice president of SPJ, which under our organization, if you're elected vice president, you automatically become president the following year. I had a previous president, Rebecca Aguilar, when she took over as president, as the first Latina president of SPJ. She reached out to me at the time in my capacity as president of the LA chapter of SPJ. And so, she had we knew each other from working in the same market together in Dallas many, many moons ago. And we weren't super good friends, but we would see each other out in the field, and we were, competitors, and had a very kind of positive competitive nature between the two of us. We knew if we were on the same scene together that we had to bring our A game because we didn't want to be out scooped by the other person. And so she reached out to me. She said that she had been kind of watching the work I'd been doing at SPJLA. And she said, I really think that you could be a future president of SPJ. I think you should run. And to be honest with you, my response to her was, I don't think so. Why would I do that? And she said, because I think you can be effective. And I think that, you have the kind of leadership style that the organization really could use. And so, I took some time to really think about it. And here's my kind of mantra. I don't take on any roles where I don't think I can be impactful. And so I had to take a second to really think about whether or not I felt like I could be impactful for the organization. And so once I kind of gave it some time, I said, you know what, I think I can. I think I can do this, and I think I should do this. I'm very, very aware of my ancestors and what they had to do just to fight to be seen as human. And so for me, everything that I do in my career, in my life with my family, it's in service of their legacy. And I think to squander this time that I have on this earth, by not putting myself in positions where I can be impactful, it is a dishonor to their legacy. And so for me, that's the reason why I decided, you know what, I can do this. I can be impactful. I'm going to run for this position and see what happens. And if I'm, lucky enough to be able to be voted in, I'm going to take this time and do something great. And I'm going to leave the organization better off than I found it.
I think that's so incredibly impactful, and I love that. I came in kicking and screaming. So it goes a ways back before I ran. I had a very, very dear friend who was president at the time of CMA, Kelly Lash. And I tended to be a rabble rouser on our listserv in the name of DEI. Like, I was going to call you out. We're gonna argue about this. We need to do better. Our organization needs to do better for our students. And Kelly was so incredibly gracious and magnanimous. And she saw me lighting up, the listserv or lighting up on Twitter about how CMA has to do so much better. And she understood that I was critical because I cared. I
Mm.
was critical because I wanted us to be better and do better. And she said, you know what? Have you thought about doing a DEI pre-con? You should do that. She put me in positions in where I could share my message and impact students and advisors in a really, really important way. And so we became really good friends after I yelled at her on the listserv. um, and then she came to me in I want to say 2018. She's like, you should really think about running for the board. I was like, I just started a new job. I'm not sure. I ran. I did lose, not by much, but I did lose. And then she came back to me and she said, hey, I really think that you need to be on this board. You need to run again. And I said, okay. How do we do this? We created a war room. We're talking strategy. And then they came back to me and said, hey, you can either run for a VP position or president-elect. President-elect for us is 2 years as president-elect and then 2 years as president. It's a lot of commitment. I don't do commitment like that. And so we had a long conversation. I said, you know what? I have a lot of ideas and I really care about this organization. 2 years is not going to be long enough. Let's run for president-elect. And if it wasn't for her and her belief in me and her challenging of me and helping me understand the organization, I don't think I would be here. And I am so incredibly grateful for her and her friendship.
Absolutely love that. Yeah. So the next question I have for y'all, going along with that is, did you find balancing personal identity with professional expectations challenging? And how did you navigate both of those, conflicts?
I feel like, it's interesting with identity. I would say maybe a good right before the pandemic hit, so right around maybe 2017, I really started to lean into who I was and be unapologetic for it, right? So I started to kind of live the life of someone that if I was in a room where I wasn't historically supposed to be, that I better take up space and I better use my voice, or else why else am I there? Right. So because of that, and because of, my journey to getting comfortable in that space, once I took on the role as SPJ VP, I was already like, look, it is what it is. I am who I am. I can't change that, and I'm not going to. And I'm not going to apologize for who I am. And I'm going to show up authentically me in every space that I'm in. And so, you know, being in spaces where I'm in a leadership role or I have a seat at the table where there are other influential leaders in the room, I lean into my identity. I don't see it as a hindrance. I see it as a benefit. And, I make sure that I advocate for people who look like me who aren't in that space, because that is part of why I'm there. To make sure that we have that representation, to make sure that other people understand that there's other perspectives and points of view and other places where people come from that has to be taken into account when decisions are being made, when initiatives are being launched, when we're thinking of marketing plans or communication plans. And so, for me, there's never, at least in the last 10 years or so, there hasn't been such a, you know, um, butting of heads of my identity and the labels of the leadership positions that I own, right? It's always been for me, this is who I am. I can't change it. I don't want to. And I want to use that to be able to be impactful.
Oh, wow. This is why I consider Ashanti one of my role models because she's so incredibly fantastic and authentic in herself and so sure of herself. And that's not always been my experience, to be quite honest. I've only been president for 2 months now. And I do remember there was like, it was Washington, D.C., fall 2022. Trying to remember what year we're in. And I sat down with the former president, who is one of my mentors, and I said, I don't think I can do this. I don't know what I was thinking. I can't, glad hand with people and, be polite with people that I know do not like me. I just can't be fake. Like, I'm not that person. And she said, Jackie, 78% of your membership voted for you. They know who you are. They know what you're going to do. And 78% still voted for you. And so for me, I've been just trying to lean in and remember that these are membership and I love them and value them so much. They know who I am. They know what I bring to the table and they know my personality. And it's okay to be me unapologetically in this role. Um, I also think about the fact that like I'm a single mom. And so when we talk about um, registration rates or different opportunities or new revenue models, I lean into that as well and share that with our board that as a single mom, no, I can't do that. As a single mom, no, I can't take a Sunday morning meeting at 6 a.m. It's my weekend with my child. Hey, no, I can't talk to you at 7 p.m. because I've got to cook dinner for my kid. I've got to make sure that she's taken care of first. The association will come second or third.
Can I jump
Right.
into it is so important because Jackie and I both are mothers. I have two little girls, she has a little girl, and boundaries are so important.
So important.
Especially when you take on these leadership roles. There are times when I will just say, look, I'm sorry, I'm not available. And I'm not really willing to give, a reason why. I'm not available because I'm not available. So
Right.
let's find another time.
I
And
really,
I think, leaning into that and being able to be comfortable in the boundaries that you've set for yourself, it's so important to be able to continue to do this work and have it be sustainable. Because if you are constantly on call, right, for the organizations that you work for, or even the job that you do, there's nothing left in the tank for your family. And that to me is not acceptable. My family, my kids, my husband, they have to come first. And all of this other stuff is secondary because if they're not taken care of, I can't do the work that I want to do to be impactful.
yeah, absolutely. I think back to like a flight a couple of years ago that I took, and I was reading Shonda Rhimes's book, The Year of Yes. And I'm very much leaning into the year of no. No, I can't do that. No, I don't have the capacity for that.
Yep.
No, I'm not going to do that right now. Yes, we can talk about this in 4 weeks, not right now. No, I have to take care of my child. It's not just setting boundaries, I've learned, because I set boundaries all the time. It's making sure that I also honor my boundaries because no
Yes.
one else is going to honor my boundaries for me. It doesn't make sense to set a boundary and then let people trample all over them. Because if you set the boundary and you don't honor it, it does nothing for you.
And it's not a boundary. It's
Right.
no longer a
Right.
boundary.
Right. Yes, I love that. I don't have kids, but my answer is always going to be if it's a no, it's a no. So I don't, that's just how it is. But yeah, I completely hear y'all on that one. Next question I have for y'all is: were there specific moments when you felt the weight of responsibility as the first in your leadership role, and how'd you navigate that pressure?
Actually, I don't. I go into each role thinking about how can I, Ashanti, be effective and impactful, right? So I try to kind of let all of the noise go away and focus on the task at hand. What are the steps that I need to do? What is the plan that I need to put in place? Who are the people that I need to surround myself with in order to be impactful, in order to leave the organization that I'm leaving better off than I found it? Right. So for me, that added pressure, it's internal. It's internal a lot of times, right? We create these boundaries for ourselves. We create these impossible hills to climb inside of our heads when in actuality nobody is necessarily looking at us like that. And so for me, I try to get rid of all the noise and focus on the task at hand. What is it that we need to do? How is it that we need to move so that we can be efficient and effective? And I think if you focus on those things, all of the noise, it's not going to matter. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like how you're moving through the world. There's always going to be someone that doesn't like the decisions that you make. But as a leader, that's part of the job. You have to take the good with the bad. It is what it is. So I'll often say, look, you can be critical of me. I get it. Totally understand that is part of leadership, and I'm okay with hearing the criticism. I'm okay with hearing the feedback. I'm not always going to take that information and turn it into action, but I'll listen, and I'll take it into account. But at the end of the day, I have to make a decision that I know is best for the information that I have at the time and for what the moment calls for. And so for me, a lot of that identity part of it and a lot of that external noise, I don't really let it impact how I do my job and the work that I know that I need to do. Because I think if you can focus and you can put a plan together and you can focus on executing it, none of that other stuff is going to matter. People are going to see the outcome of what you're doing, and they're going to judge you based on that.
That's great. I think I feel that way every day, honestly. I was talking to our former president, Chris Whitley, and I told him, I was like, I really don't want to be Obama in a tan suit. I'm a young single mom. I'm the first millennial president, the first president of color, and there is that internal pressure and drive to be the best. Um, I cannot fail. I cannot fail this organization. I cannot fail my parents. I cannot fail my family. Um, when this is all said and done, I don't want folks to point to one tiny misstep and say, she wasn't a good president. And so there's a lot of internalized pressure. And my boss tells me this all the time when we do my performance evaluation. She's like, you're so hard on yourself. The biggest critic that you have is yourself. And I'm working through that in counseling. But it's just like, okay, I've got to achieve more. I've got to accomplish more. I've got to prove that I am in this role because I deserve to be in this role. And that's something that keeps me up at night a lot of times, working through that, trying to figure it out. I think for me, really that moment, it hit probably a couple of months before my installation, and it hit definitely during my installation, when our former president was talking about me becoming the first. I think it was during our board meeting on site in Atlanta. And he was just like, want to thank Jackie. Jackie's going to be, in this historic role. And I cried in a board meeting. And I don't like crying. I'm a Scorpio. We don't do emotions.
Oh, girl, I'm a Scorpio too. Okay, that makes so much sense now.
Hey, water
Okay.
signs in the building. I'm a Pisces.
Okay.
And I just cried because I was just like, oh God, this is real. I am responsible for this role and for this organization. And then the morning of the installation, it was like the clouds parted and the sun came out. And I realized, you know what? I've been preparing for this role, my entire life. Everything I've done has led me here. I may not feel ready, but I am ready.
This is healing for me. I'm like, yes, I need to hear this before I start my term. So, so the next question I have for y'all is, as leaders, did either of you feel a heightened sense of responsibility in advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion within your organizations? And how did you address these issues?
Yeah, I think that, looking how I look, and I look like this every morning when I walk out the door. There is no changing that. And I'm completely amazingly at peace with that. I think that I have a responsibility to advocate for people who look like me. And I'm not the kind of person that shies away from that. If I'm going to advocate for a certain community, I'm going to say it right outright. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to, make it palatable for other people. I truly and honestly believe that growth comes in uncomfortable conversations. And so for the folks that are around me, I make it very clear, be comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations because we're going to have a lot of them and it's okay. You don't have to know everything. You can ask me questions, right? You don't have to feel like you have to censor yourself. But if we don't have those uncomfortable conversations, if we don't center people who do not look like us, who do not have the experiences that we have, then we're going to have a really hard time being sustainable as an organization. And that's just the truth. Our organizations have to reflect, especially in the leadership area, have to reflect the memberships that we have. And in both of our memberships, both SBJ and CMA, those memberships also reflect the makeup of our country. And the makeup of our country is not, it's not homogenous. It is a myriad of different people from different walks of life, from, different identities and gender identities, all of these different things. It's a mosaic. And so if we are not centering that in almost everything that we do, it's a problem. That's an issue. And we need to course correct. And so for me, I don't shy away from those conversations. They're important. And, I encourage everyone to have uncomfortable conversations. That's where the growth happens. That's how we move forward. And that's how we are more inclusive and make people and members feel like they belong in the organizations that we're running. Not just that they, are included, but they feel like they belong. And so also that goes to, a succession plan. How are we making sure that people feel like they belong so that they can take on leadership of the organization when Jackie and I are long gone, right? So, to me, we have to face those issues head on. We have to champion those issues. And that's always been at the forefront of any platform that I've had in any leadership position that I've had. Those conversations have to happen.
Yeah, I would say that I didn't have a heightened sense of DI once I got in my role. I've been doing this. When I got hired in my first college media advising role in 2012, my department was part of the multicultural center. And so I have been ingrained for the last 11 years about conversations across difference and figuring out how that ties to student media. I started working with DEI, particularly doing consulting in 2016 for different college media outlets. So this is work I've been doing for a really long time. I think that's another thing with, my role on the board. Folks know that I have been doing this work, having these conversations, and that is expected of everyone that I work with, that we're going to keep, how do we make sure that we include our LGBTQ students and advisors? How do we ensure that we are, you know, in having Latina keynoters and speakers? How do we embrace our Asian American family? How do we talk about diversity beyond race, including accessibility and disability? So not really a heightened feeling of responsibility. It's just ingrained in who I am and the conversations that I've always had.
And I think as
Yeah.
Black women, we've always been doing this work. I mean, it's kind of we to be honest with you, whether we like it or not, we have always been at the forefront of doing this type of work in this country. And I'm proud of that legacy, and I'm happy to keep it going.
Agreed.
Absolutely. So, another question I have, in navigating the challenges of being the first, how do you prioritize self care and well being to sustain your leadership journey?
Jesus.
Well, it's interesting. Jackie brought up earlier, therapy. I am a huge proponent in going to see a therapist on a regular basis, because when you are in a leadership role, when you come from a marginalized community, especially when you're a Black woman in this country, yeah, you need some, tune up to your mental health on a regular basis, to keep you grounded, to keep your perspective clear, to be able to see the forest for the trees, all of those things. And so, I think a huge part of self-care is mental health care. I also think that, making sure that you take time for yourself, where you shut off from the world for a day and say, look, I'm gonna be out of pocket this day, all day, and that's okay. And don't reach out to me. I will reach out to you tomorrow, and we'll pick back up, and everything will be great and fine and dandy. But like, you have to take that time for yourself. You have to make sure that your needs are being taken care of. It's kind of like, they always say pack your own chute. If you're going to go skydiving, you want to pack your own chute first before you help anybody else. If you're on a plane and it's going down, you want to secure your safety device first before you help anybody else. It's the same thing with self-care, in order for you to continue to do this type of work where you are constantly taking care of other people, right? That's what leadership is. You are constantly taking care of other people, other people's needs, organizational needs, all of those things. You have to set aside time to then take care of yourself, or none of this other stuff matters. It just doesn't. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I've done this year, in working with my supervisor, is just Jackie days, where I take a day off work once a month. I take my kid to school and then I go do whatever I want. I have a new assistant director. She is fantastic. She took me for a hike. I was just like, you want to drag my body into the woods, but we hiked for 3 miles. We're working on a yoga class now for January. But really prioritizing self-care is so incredibly important. I'll be very honest that I think it was 2 days after Christmas. I was at home. I was getting ready to go to work after driving in the early morning from Atlanta. And I was like, I don't feel good. It's like, I feel lightheaded. I feel dizzy. My arm hurts. My heartbeat was racing, and I have a blood pressure monitor at home. And my blood pressure was in the hypertensive crisis range. And I called our nurse line and they said, you need to go straight to an ER or an urgent care. And I've known, like, I've had chest pain for many, many months, honestly, years. I've known that something wasn't quite right, but I've canceled appointment after appointment because it was like, oh, I need to be at this meeting, or oh no, this popped up and I need to answer this question or update the website. And it really was a wake-up call for me that I have to prioritize myself. I have to prioritize my health care, because my daughter is 11. And I want to make sure that I am there for her when she's 21 and 31 and 41. When she's 51, she might have to be on her own. But I was just realizing that, I've been pushing so hard for so long, and my body was saying, this is too much. We have to slow down. It is okay to slow down. So spent all Friday in the doctor's office getting all the tests done, and I'm still waiting on more tests to be done. And I have to remind myself that my work is not more important than my life, that my work is not more important than being Olivia's mom. And so a little bit of a paradigm shift there that no matter what I accomplish, my greatest accomplishment is being Olivia's mom. And I need to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to keep doing that.
And also, the thing too about burning the candle at both ends is that if you don't take a break, oh, your body will make you take a
Oh,
break.
oh yeah.
It
Yeah.
will
Oh yeah.
sit you down, even
Yeah.
if you're not ready to be sat down. So, I think that's another reason you really have to pay attention to what's going on with your body, your stress levels, self-care,
Yeah.
because, you're going to get that rest, whether you like it or not. And it's either going to be in a form that you are okay with or in a form that you're not okay with.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a period of time where I was waking up at 5 a.m. and was on Slack or on email by 5:30, in Slack and email or phone calls until about 10 o'clock, then in the office until 5 or 6 or 7, picking up my kid, cooking her dinner, hanging out with her until 10. And the second she got in bed, I was, responding to more emails, taking more phone calls until 1 o'clock in the morning, running off of 4 hours of sleep at a time. And that's just not sustainable. And my body is like, Jackie, we're done with that. So
Mhm.
I'm working on getting better, doing better.
Absolutely. You got to take time for yourself because remember, you can't lead if you're not, you know, good here. So, absolutely. So, on a more positive note, can both of y'all share an example of a moment when you felt particularly proud to be the first in your role and recognize the impact of your leadership on others?
I actually think it was the day that I was sworn in at SPJ's last convention, being able to stand up there and raise my hand and speak the oath. And then I had to give a speech. And at the time when I was sworn in, SPJ was going through some financial challenges. I'm sure many of you saw an article that came out in Neiman Lab back in, September. Some of that information was shared without authorization and by a person who didn't have all the information, who didn't have all of the knowledge of conversations that I had already been having with our foundation president about coming up with a plan to help us out of the financial challenges that we were facing. And so the idea that or this narrative that was starting to be spun that I might be the last president of SPJ, I had to debunk that in my speech, right? I had to make it very clear and unequivocal. Like, I have no plans of being the last president of SPJ. We have a plan and we're going to get through this. And it's not going to take a couple of years. We're going to do it within my term. And at that moment, I think I really felt the gravity of the role that I was taking on, the responsibility of it, and how I really needed to ensure that I put this organization with the help of so many amazing volunteers that work in leadership, even our staff at headquarters, that together we could put this organization on a more sustainable path, and ensure that it was financially viable going forward. And so for me, that was a proud moment to be able to say to our membership, I have no plans of being the last president of SPJ. In fact, I think when my term is over, we're going to come out of this being a stronger and better organization because I know we can do it. And so for me, that was a really proud moment to be able to say that. And I remember I shared the speech with my father, and I just remember him calling me and saying, I'm so amazingly proud of you. And I think that was the moment that really just kind of everything, comes at you at once and you're like, oh my goodness, to hear your parent look at you and say, this I could not have dreamed up and I could not be prouder of my child. And I think for me, that was the moment that I will always remember, in being sworn in as the president of SBJ. It was actually, to me, I'm a firm believer that you're always exactly where you need to be when you need to be there, right? Whether you think that that's where you should be or not, there are no accidents, right? There are no accidents. And so for whatever reason, I was the president that needed to be there at this particular moment in time. And I take that seriously. And, and it's not lost on me.
I think I have two moments. One is professional and one is personal. And so the professional moment for me, I think I was at an advisor reception at one of our conventions and, talking to folks. And someone came up to me and they said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "I meet a lot of people. I'm so sorry. Remind me." And he said, "I came to your session as a student a couple of years ago about diversity, equity, inclusion. I really appreciate all the things that you shared with me. This is my first CMA convention as an advisor." And for me, it really kind of tugged at my heartstrings whenever people ask me, like, why are you on this board? Why do you want to be president? It's to ensure that there is something there as a safety net for people like me. When it was 2012 and it was my second day as an advisor, and I thought we were going to talk about AP style and photojournalism, and a student came in my office and cried for 3 hours straight. I looked around and said, "What the hell have I done?" My goal has always been to make sure that this organization is here, it's solvent, and it's accessible for people like me who didn't know what they were doing but needed assistance. And so to have that person, a former student, remember my session and now be an advisor, was so incredibly impactful for me. It reminded me, okay, yes, I got this email, or yes, I got this Slack message, or I got this call, or I have this problem. This is why. This is my why for doing this and performing in this role. The personal example is thinking back on my installation as well. Um, my mom came, she lives in Atlanta. I was installed in Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. So my mom came up, she's suited and booted, like dripping diamonds everywhere because she's mom. And my best friend, Albert, he lives in California. He flew from San Francisco to Atlanta, drove to Birmingham, picked up my 11-year-old, and then drove her over to Atlanta so she could be there at the installation. I was like, this is too much work. It's a lot of logistics. It's a headache. I don't have time for this. She's going to miss school. He's like, no, she needs to be there. That was on Wednesday. On Friday morning, we went to her school for a picnic. They're like showing off how they know fractions with these different recipes. We're making, chocolate chip cookies at midnight because we completely forgot coming back from convention that we had to do this. And so we get to the school and her friends are there and her teachers come up to me and every single one of them walk up and say, Olivia told us you won an award in Atlanta and she's so proud of you. She's been bragging about you to everyone." And her friends are coming up and says, "We heard you're the president now." And for me, that was so incredibly important and so impactful that she got to see me step up and become the president, see me get installed, and know that her mom is doing important work. It's annoying because I can't play with her all the time, but it's important work. And that I could role model for her own future, that she can achieve greatness as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely love that. That is just so inspiring for me. We're gonna move on to the last question before we open it up for everybody else. But it is, what advice do you have for individuals aspiring to break barriers and become leaders in their respective profession?
I think my biggest piece of advice, is to not doubt yourself, to really truly and honestly believe that when you're given these type of opportunities, when you earn these type of opportunities, it's because you've done the work. It's because you have prepared. It's because you've made all the mistakes that you need to make and you've learned from them and you've grown from them. So my biggest piece of advice is to trust that you have what it takes to lead. Trust that you have what it takes, to break barriers. Trust that you have what it takes to be impactful. And so, trusting yourself and your abilities and your capabilities, and what you could potentially do is number one. If you don't believe in yourself, it doesn't matter if 50 million people around you believe in you. You're not going to be able to do it. So being able to quiet those voices in your head that tell you you can't, that tell you you're not enough, that tell you you don't belong, that tell you it shouldn't be you, that ask, why you? You have to be able to quiet down those thoughts. And, imposter syndrome is real. It's real. I mean, I had a student ask me, when does imposter syndrome go away? And I said, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's really about making sure that you surround yourself with people who you trust, who can give you a gut check when you're hearing those little voices in your head that tell you you can't do something, right? Michelle Obama in her last book talks about your kitchen table, right? Like, who are you filling your kitchen table with, where you can constantly go to them and say, hey, this is happening. I have this opportunity. I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling like I don't measure up. What do you think? And knowing that they will give you an honest answer, whether it's something you want to hear, or whether it's something you don't want to hear. But that is what combats that imposter syndrome. And that is what is going to allow you to break those barriers and to feel like you can break those barriers and be impactful and be effective. So my biggest piece of advice is believe in yourself and the work that you've done and the preparation that has gotten you to the point where you are to be able to even compete for these amazing opportunities that may then break barriers, right? I don't think Jackie and I ever chased what we're doing now with the idea that we're going to break a barrier. No, we chase these opportunities with the idea that we could be impactful and that we could make a difference, and we can do something good to show other people who look like us that it's possible. That's it, right? So that belief in yourself, I think, is number one.
Yeah. I was definitely going to say build your team. You can't do it all on your own. You can't shoulder all the weight and responsibility on your own. And make sure you build your team in a strategic way. Make sure you have different personalities and perspectives represented and different talents. Um, I have the entrepreneurial friend. I have the someone has a deep knowledge of board politics and of different associations and how to run them. And I have a person I can call and say, hey, sis, I'm dealing with this. I'm not sure if it's because we're having this issue because I'm president or if it's because I'm a Black woman, and they can look at it through that lens with me. And I really appreciate every single one of them and that they pick up my phone calls at random hours of the night. The one thing that um, I'll say my partner, he's fantastic. Something that really I'm trying to internalize and continue to think about throughout the year. We were talking about me becoming president. And he says, oh, well, you need to make sure that a news release goes out about that. I was like, no, not necessary. I'm a background player. I don't like to be in the forefront. And he looked at me and he said, Jackie, you got to celebrate your wins. You deserve to be celebrated. I think a lot of times, especially, we deal with so much imposter syndrome that we hyper focus and I mean me, hyper focus on the things that could have gone better, that we could have done more, that we could have pushed harder. And he was constantly reminding me, look at all you've done, celebrate what you've done. And I think that's really, really important to remember. When things don't feel like they're quite gelling the way you want them to, or they're not turning out the way you want them to, you have done so much already. And that is more than enough.
Absolutely. I feel like, Jackie, that really resonated with me. I feel like the person who is that for me is the assistant director of student media at USC, Sydney Kramer. Love her. She's in this chat. Is when I was getting announced as the first Black station manager, I was like, Sydney, do I put it on LinkedIn? And she looked at me, she was like, hell
Yeah,
yeah, you put it
yeah,
on LinkedIn.
absolutely you
She was
do.
like, she was
Bold
like,
lettering,
she was like,
all caps.
absolutely you do. She was like, you absolutely need to put that on your LinkedIn. That is huge, Nick. And I was like, okay. Because, I'm like you, Jackie. I'm like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I'll just, but celebrating your wins is important. Being the first is important. Being here is important. Being visible is important to people. So thank y'all both for answering these questions with me. And I'm going to turn it over to the audience. I believe you can ask questions in the chat for Jackie or anybody. So just ask away or ask me questions. I'm here too. So it's okay, not all at once now.
It looks like Gary might have a question.
Can we unmute him, Mike?
There we go. Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Gary.
Gary.
Hi. Nick, first of all, great job with the questions. Really, really enjoyed your questions that you picked to ask today. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Second of all, I really should introduce myself. Jackie knows me, obviously. But I'm Gary Metzger. Ashanti, I'm on the West Coast like you.
Awesome.
I teach at Long Beach State in the journalism department. And I am the president of the California College Media Association. Just took over from Elizabeth Smith, who's at Pepperdine. I actually had a question and a follow-up, if that's okay. My first question is for both of you. How did you get started in journalism? Did you have a relative, somebody you know who encouraged you either in high school or in college? I had an aunt and uncle who worked at the Miami Herald who hooked me when I was 9 years old when they took me to see the printing presses at the Miami Herald, and I got this smell of ink in my nose, and I still have it to this day. So I'm wondering how both of you, how you got started in the world of journalism.
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting. I went to Columbia undergrad and had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. I changed my major 6 times because I was like, I don't know. The summer before my senior year in college, I had an internship with ABC News and completely changed my worldview. I was like, oh, maybe there's something to this. I don't know. Maybe. I also took a public speaking course my senior year in college, and towards the end of the course, the professor came up to me and he was like, hey, you know, Columbia has a campus-wide oratory competition. And I said, well, good for Columbia. And he's like, no. I think you should enter. I think you could win. And I was like, yeah, not interested. And he was like, there's a $2,500 cash prize. And I said, where do I sign up? And so so I competed in the informational oratory category and I won. So I won $2,500 and the George Curtis Prize in Oratory at Columbia. And I was like, you know what, maybe there's something to this. I ended up majoring in sociology. And so I was like, maybe there's something where I could marry this love of sociology, this love of public speaking, and figure out a career. And I landed on journalism. And so I ended up going to the University of Miami, getting my master's in journalism. And that is an insanely hands-on master's program. And so I learned how to do everything from shooting to editing to interviewing. You know, we had to produce a weekly newscast that was live. And so, you know, that's how I got my start. And, you know, I had a professor there who I still talk to this day named Sam Roberts. He was a former executive producer of the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. And he was the first person to tell me, you can do this. Like, this is a career that you could be very, very, you know, successful in. And he's like, not just in front of the camera, but if you decided that you wanted to go the management route, you could do that too. And so that I think was the first time where I felt like this was an industry that I wanted to be a part of. I wanted to tell people stories. I wanted to be impactful to communities, especially marginalized communities, for people who look like me or who even don't or that are from marginalized communities. And so that's how I ended up getting into journalism.
I fell into journalism. Didn't realize that people could write their opinions for a living. Had written essays in middle school that won awards. And I was just like, yeah, this is just something I had to do for class. In high school, I was in yearbook, which was more of me and my two best friends going to hang out in the library almost every single day because it was incredibly unserious. But I always wanted to be a dentist. Like that was my goal in life, was to be a dentist since I was literally in second grade. I had apprenticed under an army dentist. I was going to be a dentist and I needed to take health professions my junior year. Well, I was also taking 4 AP classes. Health professions didn't fit in my schedule. So my guidance counselor put me in newspaper because I'd already been in yearbook. And I looked at her and I said, "You have ruined my life. I will never be a dentist." And I was right and I was wrong. I was never a dentist. She did not ruin my life. Um, so I joined the high school newspaper. I wrote an editorial because we weren't having pep rallies anymore. And I lined out like, this is how we have pep rallies in the future. And then the principal called me to his office and said, "Talk to me about this idea a little bit more." And I was like, wow, I can write things and make people change their minds. I like that. And so I went to University of South Carolina, worked at the Daily Gamecock from, I think, September of my freshman year, took a bunch of internships, and then worked in journalism in Florida for a couple of years afterwards. The day my newspaper got sold, my student media advisor, Scott Lindenberg from USC, called me and he said, "Hey, Jackie, I know you said you were coming for my job in 5 years, and it hasn't been quite 5 years yet, but they have a college media advising position open at Clemson. I know the guy there. You should apply." And that's how I got into college media advising.
Wow. Wow. That is so great. You know, Jackie, you said you've fallen and you can't get up from journalism.
Yeah.
Right. My comment was, like Jackie, I've been a member of CMA since I think like 2011 or 2012. And I've had an opportunity a long time ago. I did a session with Jermaine Prochy. He's at Southern University, Baton Rouge. And we used to do a session called Black Advisors Matter. And we would only get like 2 or 3 advisors to come to our little workshop and everything. And the thing was, the advisors weren't people of color who were advising HBCUs and things like that. And I had done, excuse me, a session, a fall session when ACP and CMA combined to do a session about the Gramblingite at Grambling University. And I even paid for the students, I paid their gas money to come to New Orleans because the football team at Grambling was practicing and doing training in inhumane conditions, torn workout benches, ceiling tiles falling down. They had to pay for their own Gatorade at the time. And so for one game, I don't know if you'll remember this, they protested and they wouldn't get on the bus, and Grambling had to forfeit the football game. And the students who were doing social media and writing editorials, the advisor fired them. Even though it was a student-run newspaper, they were fired. And ESPN did a lot on it. They were on national media, and I asked them to come to New Orleans to talk about it and everything. And it was just from then, everything I said to myself, I really wanted to do whatever I can to help HBCUs with, because I'm a design person. I designed at the LA Times for 24 years, and I want to help HBCUs with their design and help with advisors if they have questions. And it's just been really challenging to see that progress and everything, to see more people of color working with HBCUs and not white advisors like me helping them and everything. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there and everything, that it would be great to have more people of color working with HBCUs and in all the ways, because I think Michael Koretsky, he started a new project and they help. I think, Jackie, do you remember it was Spelman College, I think?
Yeah, the Renews Project is a partnership actually between CMA, SPJ, and and ACP and a couple of other organizations.
And SND is getting involved too.
Right, that helps revive dormant newspapers at HBCUs. And now I think they have their first HSI this semester. And we're incredibly proud of that program. I think HBCUs are an area focus for our membership committee and for our organization as a whole. It's a challenge, especially when it comes to funding. That's why we have our Kelly Lash Travel Scholarship Program that's particularly focused on HBCUs, HSIs, tribal colleges, because we know that access, a lot of the access issues, they stem from finances. And if we can help ease the finances, we can assist them with getting further education. I think HBCUs, I did not go to one, but I know that there is a very strong affinity with NABJ. That's their convention, just like CMA for me is my convention. And so we've got to think really strategically about how do we assist them in ways that are impactful. How do we make sure that we provide them with adequate pathways for success and growth, and also understanding that many of them are doing well and fine with the communities that they have.
Got it. Got it. Shanti, I would love to contact you later because
Yeah.
Jackie, no offense, but the Associated Collegiate Press Spring Convention is in La Jolla this year. And so I'd like to, maybe we could, I also work with JACC, Journalism Association of Community Colleges, and would love to maybe come up with some workshops that we can do in March.
Yeah, absolutely. I literally just stepped off of being the faculty advisor of Santa Monica College's campus newspaper because
The
I just
Corsair.
got, yes, the Corsair, because I just got promoted to an associate dean position. I'm not allowed to teach anymore. So, but I've been a member of CMA, ACP, JACC since, oh my goodness, 2017. And no, actually, I take that back. Since 2014, because I was the faculty advisor for Loyola Marymount University's student media, the Roar Network, as well as a co-advisor of the Loyolan and of their yearbook as well. So I am very familiar with student media because that has been my life for quite some time. And so would be happy to talk to you, Gary. Would be happy to talk to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Any other questions? I know we're coming up on the top of the hour.
Nobody else? All righty. I guess I'll go ahead and say thank you to Ashanti and Jackie for being here. Thank y'all for Jackie for contacting me, allowing me to be the host of this. It was a lot of fun. And thank you to all y'all who are still here. I really appreciate it. And we are so happy to have y'all. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. You did an amazing job. And thank you, Jackie, for reaching out and having this great idea. I think this was so impactful, and we should probably take this on the road and do it.
Oh, yeah.
Do it again somewhere. So
I just want to thank Nick so much. Nick and I met in Atlanta. I think I randomly stopped him while he was walking into registration. I was just like, you go to South Carolina. What do you do there? And then we had a longer conversation later, and I basically adopted it and say, okay, you belong to me now. And when I was thinking through hey, I really want to do this confab with Ashanti, but I really want to incorporate students, Nick came to top of mind. And I called his advisor. He happened to be in his advisor's office at that time. And he said, oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that, especially when it comes to being the first, that we provide opportunities to others. And Nick, you blew it out the water. I am so incredibly proud of you.
Thank you.
We have more
Thank you.
confabs coming up for CMA in the near future. I know we have one a little bit later this month about contests. Please, if you are a CMA member, check our listserv, check our website, collegemedia.org, to keep up to date on everything we're doing. If you're not a College Media Association member, please go to collegemedia.org and consider joining. It's $100 for a membership. You don't have to be a college media advisor. We have a lot of affiliate members as well. We have a great listserv where we share a lot of ideas, and we would love to have you. Thank you.